Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Georgie Stewart, Project Lead Partnerships and Micros in the School of Education. We're joined tonight by Trish Briggs, the Course Director for our K-12 degree, Stacey Fish from the Alumni Office, and Meg Durham, host of the School of Wellbeing podcast and Teacher Wellbeing Specialist. Tonight we have the third webinar in our Education for Educators Professional Development Seminar series titled Educator Wellbeing. We've heard from so many teachers about how they're working longer hours with fewer resources, and this pressure is building with an increase of burnout. I say this every single week, but it's true. Teachers have a huge role, and we deeply respect the extensive experience, knowledge, and passion you bring to classrooms across Australia. Thank you for being here tonight. Please pop any questions in the chat throughout the session. We will endeavour to answer them all at the end of the session. And just also to let you know that we are recording this session and we'll provide you a link in the coming week. Next slide, please, Trish. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country. We pay our respects to all First Nation elders, both past, present, and emerging. In particular, we acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundungurra, and Biripi people of Australia, who are the traditional custodians of the land where our campuses are located. Always will be. Always was, always will be. Next slide, please, Trish. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let's get started. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you so much, Georgie. I am thrilled to be doing this session with you tonight. And I think that you deserve a bit of a reward because you've made it here tonight. How hard is it at the end of a big school day to get up and do PD? Like, honestly, I'm sure so many of you are thinking, oh my gosh, my couch is just calling my name. There's marking to do. There's things to do. There's so many things we could be doing other than being here. So congratulations and well done for making yourself a priority. Because for so many big-hearted educators working in schools, we're just experts at caring for everybody else. We're experts at noticing what other people need. We can walk into a classroom and we can see what's happening within about 10 seconds, 5 seconds. We know which students are unsettled. We know which students need to go to the toilet. We know which students had a fight at lunchtime. We are experts in noticing everybody else, but something we struggle with is noticing ourselves and considering our own needs. And so that is my deepest passion, to help educators to consider their needs and to really improve the quality of your lives through quality choices. Because we know that when we're tired and we're depleted, we make choices that feel really good in the moment because they release that pressure valve and we feel we deserve it and it feels magical in the moment. However, it's not so good for us long term. So we're going to start with a little check-in, and to get that chat moving is in the chat, I would love you to write what's your role and what school you're in. Are you in a primary school? Are you in a secondary school? Just what your role in primary or secondary, or you might be P to 12, or you might be early learning. Just in the chat, just to get everyone warmed up on this beautiful Tuesday night. What's your role and what school are you from? Primary, secondary, P to 12, early years. Who's going to be first? Who's up in it? Oh, here we go. We're off. We've got Year 4, Professional Development Specialist, Early Childhood, Enrolment, Year 1, Vet, love that. Year 2, ECT. Oh, wow. There's such a variety of people who are here with us tonight. Secondary teacher, early years, TAFE. And this just highlights how many incredible humans work in education and how various our roles are. Because I have worked myself in 5 different schools in 3 different states. I have worked in schools with a lot of funding and a lot of money and a lot of resources. And I have worked in schools that have had very little resources and a lot of student issues and lots of big behavior. And what I have learned working in such a variety of schools in the 3 different states is that everywhere you go, there is remarkable adults. There is remarkable adults in every school. I visit schools weekly, and every time I go, I meet remarkable adults. I was at a school this afternoon, and one lady, we had known each other for about 30 seconds, but by the end of the session, I felt like she was my person. Like, this is what it means to work in education. So this session is titled Thrive by Design, because when it comes to wellbeing, we have to do it by design. Because if we leave our wellbeing to default, I'm not sure about you, but if I left my wellbeing to default, I would just be on the couch. Does anyone else love their couch? Hands up if you're a couch lover. Love a bit of couch, love that quiet time, love at the end of the day, you think, oh, I just can't wait to get on the couch. And so if I left my wellbeing to default, I would be on the couch. And as I'm on the couch, I would probably be watching just one more episode. Who starts to watch their favorite show and then you get to the end and you think, I should really go to bed, or I could just watch one more. And then your brain is thinking, oh, just one more. And then Netflix and Stan only give you 4 seconds and it starts. So you're like, oh, I better watch it. It could be a bit rude if I didn't watch this next episode. And then you start watching this next episode and you tell yourself, no, only half an hour. I'm just going to watch half an hour and then I will go to bed. And we all know that once you start watching a show, it is very hard to stop. So you can get into this cycle by default of just one more episode. And you may not watch just one more episode. You may be one of those kind of people that just one more drink. You know, we're getting halfway through the term. It's been a big term. I'll just have just one more. I deserve it. It's been tough. Another one. Or you may be one of those people that you get on the mindless scroll. Who gets their phone out and just gets on the mindless scroll? And then you get to about 9 o'clock and think, I should really go to bed. Oh, it's 9 o'clock, and think, oh, no. And then it's 9:07 and that's an odd number. So you don't really want to stop scrolling on an odd number. And then all of a sudden you're like 9:30, I should go to bed. Then it's 10 o'clock, it's 10:30. So we can get into the habit of mindless scrolling, one more episode, just another glass of wine. And then there's this other thing that we do working in education is that things get a bit quiet for about half a second and we get a bit itchy, and then we get our laptop out. And once we get our laptop out and open up the lid and we check our emails, all bets are off. It's like a vortex that just takes our attention. So we go from checking our emails to checking our portal, to checking our learning management, to checking our bank account, to checking the weather. Then all of a sudden we realize, oh, I better go see, did they email back? And then we start checking and checking and checking. And you may not start checking. You may be someone that at the end of a really, really busy day, you think, I'm just going to have a roll of chocky. Just one row. And then what happens is you have the one row, tastes really good, and think, oh, just one more. Just another row. And then another row. And then another row. And then you get to this point where you think, oh, I've already had 3/4 of the block. I may as well just finish it. I may as well just get it out of the house. And then, so these are these things that happen. And there's one more sneaky thing that happens that really gained momentum during COVID, and it's stuck around. And it's this thing called add to cart. Does anyone just add to cart? Like, oh, it's been a big day. And you just get scrolling on Instagram, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I need to buy that thing. And then you're on the website buying the thing. And then you realize, oh, I actually need 2 of those things. And then if I want to get free postage, I need to get to $99. So then I need to find something else to buy. And you're adding to cart. 3 days later, when it arrives, you realize, oh gosh, I was having a really rough night on Tuesday, wasn't I? I was feeling uncomfortable and I just had to get through. And so these are all the predictable things that we do when we're exhausted and we're depleted. So if we want to be well, it requires effort. It requires us to be deliberate, because working in schools, things are pretty full on. Put your hand up if you can see this cartoon. Can you see the cartoon? Yeah, beautiful. So this can feel like school life. Always more to do. I can't stop now. Who said that time where you think, I can't think about next week? Honestly, it's week 5. I can't do week 6 or 7 or 8. Come back to me later. Can't think about next week. We get busy. We get hyper-focused. Always more to do. And the idea of thinking about well-being, like, oh my gosh, I've got enough on my plate. I don't need to think about that too. And I hope that by the end of this session, you feel like, wow, that was really worth my time. You know what? Meg makes a lot of sense. And now I know what I know, I'm going to try to do things a little bit differently. And so the way that I've designed this session is we are going to have some breakout rooms. Now, some of you might go, I'm in my pajamas or on the couch. Totally fine. The breakout rooms are not going to be recorded. The recording's just going to be me when I'm talking. And in your breakout rooms, you're going to have an opportunity to really chat through some of these concepts. And what you'll realize is that you're not alone. What you're feeling is human. And what I'm sharing is human, it's not personal. As humans, we function in really particular ways when we're depleted and exhausted. And as humans, we function in really particular ways when we're well and feeling good. Because school life is like the ultimate dance floor. There's always one more song, one more drink, one more thing I could do. Oh, I need to go to the toilet. Oh, not now. Where's my handbag? Where are you? What's happening? School life is busy. It's the dance floor. And this session is about getting off the dance floor and getting up onto the balcony and just taking a look, reflecting on your well-being. How are you going? What's going on for you? So I just want to tell you a little story about where it all began for me. So this is a photo of when I was 4. I'm not sure, did anyone else have that haircut or have that outfit and the skivvy? And read that book. Everyone's read Who Sent the Boat. Who's read that book 5,000 million times to their classes? You know, this is a quintessential 4-year-old kinder look. And when I was as a 4-year-old, all I ever wanted was to be a teacher. I played schools for hours and hours and hours. I played schools till the time it was socially inappropriate. And my friends were like, Meg, we don't want to play schools. We want to hang at Macca's. We don't want to do schools with you. And I just always had this deep knowing that I wanted to be a teacher. And the only thing that changed for me was what kind of teacher I would become. And as I went through my schooling, I looked around and noticed what teachers looked like they were having fun and which teachers looked like they weren't having so much fun. And I'm sure you can all remember teachers in your life that as a student, you wondered, do you like kids? Do you actually like humans? I'm sure a few of you have taught with colleagues over the journey where you've questioned, did you realize that you'd be working with young people like every day? And hopefully there are teachers in your past that changed your life, that just going to their lessons made you feel like you could do things. It made the impossible possible because of the brilliant teachers that you had. And so I finished up becoming a secondary PE and science teacher. And I still remember the night before my very first class, I had my outfit laid out. I was ready to become a teacher. I was ready to get paid to be a teacher. And I remember that absolute sense of exhaustion in those first few years. Who can remember that first experience walking into school when you have all of these moments of, I don't know what I'm doing. I wasn't trained for this. This is actually really hard. If we stuck to the lesson plan, this teaching thing would be easy, but students don't stick to the lesson plan. Parents aren't always rational. Colleagues aren't always easy to manage. There is a lot of human stuff that goes on in schools. And so I started to get really curious around this human element, because if we learn how to be with humans, if we learn how to manage ourselves and not get swept away in all the drama and all the stuff that comes with working with humans, there's the potential for so much more joy, so much more learning, and so much more connection. So over a decade ago now, I studied my master's in education in student wellbeing, and that opened a door for me to this whole new way of being. When you put humans at the center, not just students, humans, all humans working in a school, because what can start to happen in schools, if we're too student-centric, we forget that adults actually need to make all these things happen. They're the ones who are going to the camps, going to the musical, doing all the things. So we need to think about all the humans in the system. How can we support all the humans in the system? And so we're going to begin this session with a little reflection activity. So find a pen. Hopefully you've got a pen there. I can see Rebecca's already writing down notes, scribbling away, which is wonderful. Piece of paper somewhere. I'm going to give you the start of a sentence, and you're going to finish the sentence. So the first sentence is, my well-being matters because. So if you just write sentence number one of three, my well-being matters because. If you don't have it, piece of paper, you can always put it in the chat, get things going in the chat. My well-being matters because. How can you finish this sentence? There is only one of me, absolutely. There's literally, we're only human. Because you matter, the most powerful element in the room, and I set the tone, absolutely. So that's the first sentence. Now, the next sentence is, my well-being really matters. So what's the next layer for you? The first layer is that surface level layer, the first thing that comes to mind. Let's go to the second layer. Why does your well-being on the planet, you're the only you on the planet, why does your well-being really matter? Beautiful here from Suzanne. I can't help others from an empty tank. Burnout is real. Yeah, I need myself. Absolutely. We're not here. Who else is going to do the jobs? Who else is going to tick things off the list? And really noticing, why does your well-being really matter? Now, because you're clever and you're really good at joining the dots and you know about patterns, you will know the start of the third and final sentence. My well-being really, really matters because the important people in my life, family, need me. Yes, I think that's a beautiful reason why your well-being matters. That you've got other people outside of work that depend on you, that care about you. Why else does your well-being really, really matter? I'm loving how people are putting this in the chat. My people, family, colleagues, students matter. Absolutely. Absolutely, your people matter. And I've seen one a little bit further back. I matter. Yes, your well-being matters because you matter. Full stop. And you want to enjoy your time in the world. And you want to have time to be with your loved ones. My loved ones don't deserve the leftovers. Absolutely. Because working in schools, it is so traditional that we bring the best to schools and we take the rest home. Who brings the A+ version to school and then you get home and roar at your own kids or frustrated with your own kids or you can't talk to your own partner because you're sick of talking to humans? You know, we've really normalized giving the best to work and having the rest at home. And I'm on a mission to change that. I'm on a mission to bring good enough to work and good enough home, to really be a little bit more kind and compassionate with our choices and what we're doing. So it begins with 5 things. This is the fundamental elements of well-being, and it begins with these 5 elements of your personal battery. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you can tell me if it's something that, yes, it's a part of your life, or no, doesn't really happen. So in the last 24 hours, have you had enough sleep for your body? Yes or no? When it comes to sleep, are many people in here sleeping or not sleeping? Just a yes or no. In the last 24 hours, have you had enough sleep? Now, for the majority of educators that I work with, the answer is generally no. And so when it comes to functioning, sleep is crucial. And I also want to be really realistic that sleep can be really tricky. It can be can be tricky when you're pregnant, perimenopause, menopause, all the temperature changes. It can be tricky when you've got children that are waking you up at all kinds of times. It could be tricky if you've got a partner that snores next to you and you find it really hard. It could be tricky because you find it easy to go to sleep, but then you wake up at 3 o'clock and then you can't get back to sleep. So there's lots of things that play into our sleep, and it's worth your attention. Thinking about, what are you doing before sleep? Are you giving your body a chance to reset and recalibrate after a really, really busy day? Because if we're on the dance floor of school life for hours and hours, and then we get home, and for so many of us, the dance floor continues with home life, we need a little bit of time to transition into that sense of safety in our body so we can sleep deeply. So that's the first thing. The second element is, in the last 24 hours, have you had some movement? So have you moved your body? And when I'm talking about movement, I'm talking about on purpose, not just I walked from this side of the campus to that side of the campus. So are you having enough movement? Are you moving your body? And why? Why is movement so important for educators? It's because movement moves emotion. And our job is emotionally demanding. You can have a day where you've barely left your office or barely left your classroom, but because the emotions were so intense, you will finish the day physically spent and fatigued, because emotional demands are physical demands. And so your mind will be telling you, I can't be bothered. I don't have the energy. I'll do it tomorrow. And the most powerful thing you can do for your body and for your mind is move. Move in a way that works for you. And when I have surveyed hundreds of teachers, the most effective movement strategy is walking. Walking, and a bonus is if you can walk with a teacher friend, because you can walk and talk and really process all of the challenges that happen in a day. Walking is so good. Oh yes, like getting in the water, walking, so powerful. We are designed to move, and we sometimes forget that we're simply animals. Yes, we're humans with a sophisticated prefrontal cortex, but we still are animals, and animals are designed to move. I just think about our dog. We've got a 14-year-old cattle dog called Kev, and Kev, every time he sees that lead, he is thrilled about it. It's a privilege for him to move. He loves to move. And so we need to take a little bit of a leaf from Kev's book and be like, hang on, this is something that I get to do. This is something that I feel so much better once I do it. And early in my career and when I was studying, I used to teach body pump classes. I'm not sure if anyone knows body pump, but it's an aerobics class with weights and music and all of the things. And I used to start the classes saying, well done. The toughest part is over. Just like for you tonight, the toughest part was getting to this session. Everything else falls into place. Same thing with movement. The hardest part is getting going. It's just physics. That old physics thing of an object in motion wants to stay in motion, or an object at rest wants to stay at rest unless there's a force. And so sometimes we have to force ourselves to get going, and then we get the benefits. So we have sleep, movement. The third area is, in the last 24 hours, have you nourished your body? Are you in the habit of eating quality foods? Or are you in that habit of just reaching whatever you can get your hands on? If it's chockies, if it's biscuits, if it's a bit of fruit, literally whatever you can get your hands on. And you're not really planning your meals. It's just sort of happening by default. And really think, yes, meal prep all the time, wonderful. Because that meal preparation, I know it's an effort, and pretty much everything is an effort when it comes to well-being, but it is worth the effort if you can have a moment throughout the day to fuel your body. Because for so many of us, we don't eat throughout the whole day, but then we get home and we inhale the pantry and we eat everything that we see. And so that's why it's so important to have things that we can use to really fuel our bodies. And noticing that when we're depleted, particularly when we haven't slept well, we're going, is coffee a meal? No, I'm sorry, coffee's not a meal. So you might need to have something with your coffee, but you'll notice that when you're tired and when you're depleted, you reach for sugar more and more and more. I know that about myself. If I go to bed after 10 o'clock, guaranteed the next day I'll be looking for more sugar hits. I'll be wanting more because I'm using that to try and give me a little bit of a lift. So we have sleep, movement, nourishment. The fourth element, and the trickiest element for educators, is in the last 24 hours, have you had some rest? Do you have time when you can forget about the pressures of school life? When you can just disconnect? It could be reading a book. For some people, they get great pleasure in mowing the lawns. For some people, it's cleaning. They love to clean. For some people, it's a good old walk and talk with someone. Can you, or do you, have pockets of respite in your life that gives your brain a chance just to settle? Because for so many of us, our lives are so intense. It feels like one thing after another. And so learning to rest, love to paint, love that. Learning to rest is a skill, and one of the most profound skills you can learn, because a lot of us have this little voice in our head that says, if we rest, it's lazy. If I'm not working, I'm not good enough. I need to be working all the time. And yet the research is very clear. When we give ourselves time to disconnect, to do things for pleasure, to connect in loving ways with our family and friends, that's when we have our best ideas. Have you ever noticed you have your best ideas when you're blow drying your hair or in the shower or going for a walk? Because you've got time to let all of the stuff that's bubbling in your mind settle and connect in new ways. And that's what creativity is, taking different information and putting it together in new ways. And that's not going to happen when we're spinning the wheels in this sense of overwhelm. And so the fifth and final element of the battery is, in the last 24 hours, have you had some quality connection? And working in schools, it is filled with connection, but a lot of our connection doesn't add that real uplift, and it's generative in nature. A lot of our connection can be quite depleting. What room are we in? What's happening? What time do we finish? Who's got that? Where's that form? Where's that student? Why is that parent here? What number do I need to call? It's very transactional and quite depleting. And so the connection that I'm talking about is, in the last 24 hours, have you looked at someone and you've just felt better because they're there? Have you had a moment with a colleague where you've just laughed? You know, something ridiculous is happening, the wheels have fallen off and it's got wobbly, but you were in it together. That you sat around in the staff room and had a little look at the breakdancing that has been happening over in the Olympics, like just having these moments of connection. And so let's bring it all together. In the last 24 hours, how charged is your battery? And this is what I really would love you to take home from this session, is your battery is everything. Your energy is the ultimate currency when you're working in schools. And think about sleep, move, nourish, rest, connect. In the last 24 hours, out of 5, how charged is your battery? I'd love to see in the chat, out of 5, doesn't mean you're a good person, bad person. It's just in general. You might even want to extend that in the last 12 months, the last 6 months. On average, how charged is your battery? As that's coming through, there's some beautiful suggestions around people who are going for an evening walk. Evening walk, super powerful, also really good for your blood glucose, so it's a bit of a bonus. Does watching Vikings count? Yeah, well, that takes you to your happy place. Absolutely. My go-to show when I'm overwhelmed with the world is The Good Doctor. I have watched The Good Doctor so many times, and it just brings me so much joy. So finding those things that lift you up and reset. 75% charge in the last month or so, 2 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5. Wow, you guys are above average, because generally when I ask this question, the average response is 2 out of 5. And so that's 2 out of 5 in general. And the interesting thing is, this did not change throughout COVID. I have been working in schools for a decade, and what changed through COVID is some areas people dropped off, but other areas they picked up. It's kind of like on school holidays. Some people are really good at movement on school holidays, So they walk during school holidays, but then term starts and they only move for about week 1 and then they sort of forget about it and they go again. Same thing with sleep, just starting to notice, or you might realize food for you is really good during term, but then on holidays, you sort of lose the plot and it's just all over the shop. So as you look at this battery, I invite you to think about what is one area that your body is yearning for you to give it. So put in the chat, if you could give your body sleep, movement, nourishment, rest, or quality connection, what does it want from you? Because when it comes to well-being, it's not a one size fits all. Some people need that sleep. Other people say, well, I don't really need that sleep, but what I desperately need is some connection. I need connection with my family and my friends during term. I'm sick of just leaving my connection to the holidays. I want to see that latest movie. I want to make time for my friends. Rest and movement, hobby, respite. Yes, really thinking about what is it that your body is yearning for, and think about how this battery can start to impact your quality of life by simple questions. So you can start to ask yourself at the start of the day, how charged am I feeling? At the end of the day, how charged am I feeling? The question can be, what does my body need today? So you won't be getting 5 out of 5 every day. That's unrealistic, not going to happen. But what you can do is something. And something is better than nothing. Because we can get into these habits of, there's not enough time, I don't have the energy, it's too cold, it's too windy, oh, now I've got hay fever, the spring's out, I don't have enough gear, my kids are little, so I can't do anything because I've got young kids, or I can't do anything because I've got teenage kids, I can't do anything because I've got no kids, I can't do anything because it's a new job or a new school, I can't do anything because I'm about to retire anyway, so I'll deal with it then. And start to notice, what are the stories that you tell yourself that you're starting to believe as fact and that are holding you back? Because when it comes to your well-being, it's about the basics. Because if we work on the basics, that's when we have so much more energy for the more complex things in life. So for example, I'm a mother. I have 2 children, 7-year-old, 5-year-old, one with additional needs. We've got a lot of things happening in our house. I'm speaking in schools each week across the country. And so there's a lot of moving parts. And I know in order for our family to function as a unit, the battery is everything. And it's not just the battery for me, it's the battery with my husband. It's the battery with the boys. Like, are they moving enough? Especially my boys. They need to be moving and eating. If we're moving and eating, the sleep happens, the connection happens, it all starts to fall into place. And this battery concept, you can also use with your students. You can start your lessons by saying, how charged is your battery? Out of 5, what's going on? You can start to teach them that their choices impact their experiences. I'm just going to cough for a moment, talking about hay fever. Who else has got hay fever early? Anyone else got the joy of hay fever early with this bit of spring? So you can use this in your staff room. You can use it in your classroom. You can use it in your own families. There is so many places where you can ask, how charge your battery? What's going on for you? And I'll cough one more time. You will start to join the dots. You will start to notice, oh, when I'm feeling good, I'm functioning so much better. And when I'm functioning better, my relationships are just so much easier. Like, everybody has an annoying colleague. Like, I have not met any teacher who hasn't had an annoying colleague either in the past or the present, or there's one coming in the door. We all have colleagues that irritate us, that do things in different ways. Like, that's just a part of working with so many humans. We all have students that can grate on us. We all have parents that really get us going. That's completely normal. But when we're feeling well, they're so much easier to manage. We can have a laugh about it. It's so much easier. But when we're depleted, it is really hard. And then we can start to think things that we're not proud of. Sometimes we can say things that we're not proud of, because when we're depleted, it is really hard to regulate our emotions. Self-regulation is much, much easier when we've got a charged battery. Because when we've got a charged battery, we have the ability to hold our tongue. We have the ability to remind ourselves that's not so great. We can make so much better choices. So what we're going to do shortly is we're going to open up the breakout rooms, and you're going to go into your breakout rooms. It's totally up to you if you feel like having your camera on or off, but please engage in any way that you feel comfortable with. And I invite you to share in your group your name, maybe a little bit about where you're from, rural, metropolitan, what kind of context you work in, and talk about that battery. Sleep, move, nourish, rest, connect. Which one do you feel like, oh, I'm pretty okay with that, but which one just feels really, really tricky? And which one from this session do you want to start focusing on? So we're going to open up the breakout rooms. It's now 22. We're going to come back in 10 minutes. So you've got 10 minutes as a group to really chat about what's it like, what's working, what's not working, and enjoy this opportunity to be with other educators that get it. We're all on the same team. You're not alone. You're not alone. We're all trying to work this out together. So breakout rooms are opening.
I'm doing that now. Do you want to go into the breakout rooms as well, or you just want everyone else to go into the rooms?
We'll put everyone in, and then if there's any gaps, I can jump in.
Okay, sure. Creating
Beautiful.
it now.
Here we go. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. Enjoy getting to know each other. Welcome back. Lovely to see a few faces. You know what it's like, take you back to digital learning when you didn't see faces and you're trying to make it all happen. So it's lovely to see a few faces this evening as people are coming back. I know some groups are still finishing up. So everybody is coming back together. Hopefully you had an opportunity to connect with another big-hearted human, and we're all back. And realize that you're not alone. Hopefully you have a moment of like, wow, they're in another school or a completely different setting, and they're kind of like me too. We're all trying to work it out and make it happen. Is there anyone willing to come off mute and share something that happened in their group? Yes, please share it off mute and share.
Yes, it's really interesting, isn't it? The way we were talking about the teaching profession or education in general, K to 12, or even prep. We had prep, primary and high school, and we were all saying the same thing: the difference in the children, the difference in the profession, and even though the attention has changed and wellbeing is now a thing, the pressures are harder for the teachers, and the children have such great big gaps.
Who's noticing that? You know, this is what I hear every single day. Actually, they wanted to be a segment on a Today Show this morning. I couldn't do it, but it was essentially about this. Like, there's increasing demands, and yet the resources aren't increasing, you know? And so this is why I am so committed to getting these messages out to educators, because when we take control of our battery, we take control of our lives. Because when we're charged, we're more likely to have the conversation that we've been avoiding. We're more likely to establish and maintain boundaries. We're more likely to say, you know what, we've done the musical every year. I think we need to go to every second year. Because as we're going to explore, there's a lot of things that hold us back from taking the action that we know we need to take. And so that's what we're going to explore now. And before, I'd just love to share I'm a quote junkie. I'm not sure if there's any other quote junkies on the session tonight, but I just love quotes. And one of my favorite ones is, if it's to be, it's up to me. As the world becomes more complex and more out of control, the power lies in controlling what you can control. If that's your team, if that's your classroom, if that's your staff room, if that's your area of expertise, really focusing on that and making that your focus. Because as soon as we start to think too big picture, as soon as we start to think about all the things that are racing out of our control, it can feel overwhelming and despairing. So that's why it's so important to come back to, okay, what can I do in this moment? Within this reality, what is possible for me? And that's why when it comes to well-being, it's the small things are the biggest things. So what happens in your life when you're getting to bed a little bit earlier? What happens in your life when you're caring for yourself in ways that you would care for a dear friend? Yeah, it's that circle of control. Absolutely. It's really focusing on that. And also being really realistic and acknowledging that it's not easy. Everything I've shared tonight is not rocket science. You know, you need to sleep, move, nourish, rest, connect. Like, you know this. And yet there are things that stop us from doing it. And so that's what I really want to explore with you around this idea of why is it so hard? As big-hearted and capable humans who amazingly get the impossible done every single day, why is it so hard to get myself walking? Or why is it so hard to have that uncomfortable conversation with that colleague? What is it that stops us from doing it? And I love to think about when I was younger, I grew up in Melbourne, and my mum's family is from West Wyalong. I'm not sure if anyone knows West Wyalong, a town called West Wyalong. I know there's a few regional people here. And my dad was from a town called Ungary, which is close to West Wyalong. And I would spend my summer holidays with my cousins in West Wyalong. And what we would do for hours and hours and hours is make whirlpools. We would go into the pool and make whirlpools. Now, this is the kind of pool that was one of those blue above ground pools where you would wonder if it was going to break. Like every year you're wondering, will it last another summer? And so that's how we spent our holidays, making whirlpools, going in one direction, and then someone else will squeal, and then we'll carry on, and then we'll go the other way, and it feels really, really hard, and then it would feel easy. And then someone would say change, and then it would feel hard, and then it would get easy. And so this is why change is so hard when it comes to our habits, because we're moving against resistance, and we tell ourselves that it should be easy. You know, I'm taking care of myself. It's well-being. It should be easy. And I'm here to remind you that it does not feel easy at the start. The hardest part is just getting started. I think about when I returned to running after our first child. Oh my goodness, nothing felt the same. Like everything felt heavy. It felt like it was in the wrong spot. Like it was all really hard. And the first few weeks were the hardest, and then it gets easier. And that's pretty much everything when it comes to well-being. The first few nights of creating a bit of distance between work and home is really hard because it feels deeply uncomfortable, because you feel like you're doing something wrong, and you feel like you're not good enough, and you feel like you're behind, and what will other people think? So there's a lot of challenge when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And one of the biggest things that stop us, one of the biggest forces of resistance is guilt. Who feels that guilt? Who has this sense that shivers through their whole body from toes to head of guilt? I can't do this. I just feel too guilty. I can't read a book for pleasure. Look at all of that school stuff I've got to read. I can't sit on the couch. I've got things to do. So then you sit on the couch with your laptop, not really watching, but not really doing your work anyway. And it's so incredible how guilt can hold us back. And my invitation to you is feel guilty and do it anyway. You can do it anyway. You can feel guilty. Excuse me, my hay fever's really driving me up the wall. You can feel guilty and do it anyway. You can feel guilty about reading that book and read the book. Because what happens is the more we do things, and there's a caveat here, if you actually need to feel guilty, if you rob a bank or hurt somebody, please feel guilty. Like that's appropriate. But what I'm talking about is a really subjective sense of, oh, I've done a bad thing because I'm caring for myself, which does not make sense when you take it from your mind and you look at it, you're like, actually, That's nothing to be guilty about. Would you make someone else feel like that if they were doing that? And so we go from guilt in the driver's seat, taking us and stopping us and being in control, for guilt being in the passenger seat. Yeah, I understand. Of course you're here. You're always here. When I want to do something good, guilt, you're always here. And then you start to realize that guilt can go in the back seat. And then eventually it goes from the back seat to the boot. So it's this loud voice that stops you. You can just notice like, oh, guilt, you're here. Of course you're here. You always pop up when I go to do something for myself. Oh, come on, off we go. Instead of thinking I have to wait until I don't feel guilty, because that's just never going to happen. I've been doing this work for a decade, and I can tell you, I still have feelings of guilt, and I do it anyway, because I know it's a benefit for me, it's a benefit for my family, and it's a benefit for the educators that I work with. So guilt is something that really holds us back. And then beyond guilt, there are these 5 elements of invisible pressure that really stop us from taking the action that we deeply need. And I call these the 5 Ps. So working in school settings is intense. Everybody agrees. It's not like a calm, relaxed kind of place. There's lots of things happening. And so what we do as capable, as efficient, as caring people is we put on more pressure. And that's why I've called them the 5 Ps. So they're the 5 Ps of pressure. And as we go through, in the chat, you can say if it resonates with you, or that's me, or I've got a colleague like that. Just start to notice if there's anyone that resonates with this. The first P is perfecting. Any perfectors in the session? Perfectors love to tweak a document. Does it make your heart sing when all the font is correct? Does it make your heart sing when Canva came into your world because all of a sudden you can get the right colors and the right font and yay, my life makes sense. And then if everybody else just kept to the templates, then my life would be even better. Because perfectors, we have this beautiful skill of an eye for detail. We've got an appreciation of beauty. We really, really care deeply about the process. And that's wonderful. And all of these Ps are wonderful. They're our superpower. They make us so good at our jobs. And when we overplay perfecting, it can create disconnection. Because people don't want you to come into their classrooms because they're worried you're going to be critical about their display. Or people aren't going to send you work because they know that you can't help yourself, but you've just got to tweak it. Because you can't look at a document that's not formatted correctly. Like, it's just intolerable. And then also you can start to notice in yourself that your expectations of yourself and your performance are so high that it's gone from something that brings you joy to something that holds you down. And you can think about all of the Ps like this, that when it's working for you, it feels like a life jacket. It feels like it's buoyant, it's lifting you up. So when perfecting's working for you, you've just finished a board report and it looks good and it feels good, like, yes. But if we overplay it, if we overdo the perfecting, that jacket becomes a weighted jacket. Who's experienced that weight of expectation of how it needs to be, and that weight of, I actually can't focus on the connection right now because I'm too busy looking at the fact that you've got a spelling mistake. Like, I just can't even tolerate it. Or the idea that you had a spelling mistake in a newsletter and it sent you into a spin for a week because you have such rigid expectations, which is exhausting. Like, no one is perfect. It's a mirage. There's no such thing as perfection. And particularly when it comes to your well-being, there's no such thing as perfection. No week is the same. Sometimes things are going to work for you. Some strategies are going to be great, and sometimes they're not going to work. At some seasons of your life, it's wonderful. Other seasons, no chance. My well-being looked very, very different, and my practices looked very different when I had disposable cash and disposable time early career, because I had the weekends to myself. Now, my weekends are not to myself. Instead of doing like a pub crawl, I'm doing a park crawl. Like, we're constantly going park to park. We just park hop to keep everyone active and keep everyone moving and make sure everyone's fed. And so thinking about, is perfecting a weight on your shoulders? What would happen to you and your relationships if you could just soften a little bit? If you could give yourself that permission to make progress, not having it to be perfect. Now, you may not be a perfecter. You may be another one of these Ps, which is very common in education. Who's the pleaser? Who's the person who, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. Oh, I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to upset you. So you don't say the things when you need to say the things, but then you may say the things in the corridor, or you may say the things in the car park, or your poor partner may hear all the things and no one at work ever hears the things. And your partner's thinking, why do you keep telling me about all this stuff? Like, you could actually just talk to the person. Like, I don't even work with you. It's amazing how much we, as people pleasers, is we create so much work for ourselves because we don't want to have the difficult conversations. So instead of saying to the people in your life that, you know, it's really important for me to have a half an hour walk twice a week, how can we make this work? We seed in resentment. People pleasers know resentment so well because we don't say the thing. Don't say the thing, don't say the thing. Then eventually we say all the things. And generally we say all the things at a time that's not appropriate and no one listens to us. And then we feel like we've just lost the plot because it's been building and building and building. And so it can really stop us from taking care of ourselves because we want to please everyone. We want to be available. We don't want to say no. We don't want to say, well, actually, I'd love to help, but Tuesday nights I go to Pilates at 6, so I can't do that. And so really noticing that pleasing can get in the way of so many of our wellbeing practices because we're so consumed with other people's comfort. And I'm here to remind you that people can deal with disappointment. People can deal with the discomfort of you going to do things. The world does not fall apart. You know, for so many of us pleasers, we get so wrapped up feeling, well, I'm the only one who can do it. I'm the only one who does it right. And it's not always fact. The world does not fall apart if you go off and go for a walk 2 times a week, or if you stop to have lunch, or if you stop to go to the toilet. So many educators I work with don't even go to the toilet. They've stopped drinking water because they don't want to go to the toilet, because if they go to the toilet, they've got to go past the staff room and someone might talk to them and they get sick of talking to people. And can you see how all of this starts to play in? Instead of that simple skill of, I'd love to have a chat with you, but I'm just got to go to the toilet. Or that parent email that comes through 8 o'clock, you're like, oh, thank you for your email. I'll return it tomorrow. Or, you know, get it in the afternoon. Like, acknowledge, yeah, you want to talk to me, and I'll let you know when I'm available. Instead of feeling like we have to be available all the time. Is this resonating with people? Is there any pleasers in the group, pleasers and perfecters? Now, the third one, which is rife in education, is pretending. No problems here. They're fine in my class. My planning's fine. I'm all on top of things. Think of that analogy of the swan. So on top, everything's fine. Underneath, scrambling for dear life. Just wanting everyone to think like I've got it together. Please, does everybody just make sure that know that I've got it together, but inside, no one's got it together. That's just the secret's out. No one has it together every day. We're all making it up. Like this whole parenting thing, teaching thing, adulting thing, dealing with aging parents, dealing with all the things, dealing with tricky parents at school, dealing with boards, dealing with class changes and sizes and funding cuts. No one's been here before. We're all doing the best we can with what we've got. And so, yes, pretending is important. There are times when you're teaching and something happens and you're like, I knew this was going to happen. But in your head, you're like, I've got no idea what's going on. Why is that alarm going off? Why are they in my classroom? Have I missed something? What's going on? So we need to pretend. And we also need to have spaces where we're not pretending. We need to have colleagues or therapists or counselors or family members. We need to have spaces where we don't feel like we're pretending, where we can be honest with our teams. I once worked with an incredible head of department who was really, really frustrated with her team because she felt like they weren't pulling their weight. And I said to her, have you had a conversation with your team? She said, oh, no. They should know. Who gets into that trap? I shouldn't have to ask. They should just know. Number one, unhelpful. As soon as you hear yourself saying, I shouldn't have to ask, and they should just know, unhelpful, it's a really obvious sign that you need to be clear, because no one is a mind reader. And so from that conversation, she said, okay, I'm going to talk to my team and let them know that I'm feeling a bit wobbly, that I'm completely overwhelmed, and I need some help in particular areas. And she had this conversation with her team, and her team were blown away. They were completely in shock because she is such a good pretender. They didn't want to step in because they thought that she had it all sorted. And she circled back to me and said, Meg, I get it. I understand now. My team can't catch me if they don't know I'm falling. So this is such an important lesson in our lives. If people don't know you're wobbly, they can't support you. If you're looking so on top of it, if you're swanning around or underneath you're scrambling, people don't know. And people get worried to help because they don't want to get it wrong. And so this is why it's so important to have people that you can let them know, I'm a bit wobbly at the moment. It's all a little bit of a shambles at the moment. I know I'm going to be okay, but I just need you to be my witnesses. I need you to be the people that can see me in my strength and struggle. And that is so vital for everyone. Now, here's the fourth P, and this is another personal favorite of mine. And this is something that we're excellent at in education, and it's very important, but it can also get in the way. It's producing. Who just loves their to-do list? Who gets a buzz when they tick something off their list? Like that joy of ticking things off your list and like, whoo. And so I've learned there are some, yes, there's a me, like, yay, like even me thinking about my list and ticking things off, it gives me a rush of dopamine. Like, I just love achievement. I love getting stuff done. It makes me feel so good. And so there are some people that tick things off their list. There are some people that line. Anyone who puts a little line through, got a line, done it. And I've learned that there are some people that highlight. So they highlight, yep, done that. And there are some people that tick, line, and highlight. Like, boom, like producers unite, like love that feeling of production, which is wonderful. And we wouldn't survive in education if we weren't producers. We have to be able to produce. We have to be able to get things done. However, when we start to get hyper-focused on production, we can start to disconnect from people. Who's had the moment where someone's popped into their classroom or the office and you're thinking, oh my goodness, you're not on my list. What are you doing here? I don't have the time to talk to you. Where that person may need your time, may need your presence. And when we're really focused on achievement, we can get to the end of a busy school day and say, oh, I've got nothing done. I've got nothing done. When really you have done thousands of things. So many micro decisions, so many things have happened in that day. But what you're really telling yourself is, I didn't get anything off my list. So that's why it's important to start to reframe and think about at the end of each day, what have I done? What have I made progress on? What am I proud of? Because that interaction with a student may not have been on your list, but that is what made the difference today. That's what brought me joy today. And so as producers, we need to be mindful that striving is wonderful, but it's a skill to arrive, to enjoy that session, to enjoy a meeting with a colleague. We have time to strive, but it's also a skill to arrive and be present. And the fifth and final P is performing. Feeling like you're constantly on show. Who feels like you're constantly on show? Performing here, performing for the parents, performing at the board meeting, performing in the classroom, perform. Like there's an invisible audience everywhere you go, and you can't just be yourself. You just can't you just feel like you have to perform all the time. And yes, performing is wonderful. Yes, striving is wonderful and feeling like you're a high performer. And it's important to note that joy can come in things that you can't put on that list. You know, in the podcast this week, this beautiful guest was talking about a teacher that she was working with, and the teacher says, I decide how successful my day was. She's an early years teacher. She said, my day is successful when I get lots of shiny eyes. Now, if you work with young early years, you know shiny eyes, that look of like, oh, wow. You know, that's success. Instead of feeling like you have to be this circus performer, that moment of deep connection. So bringing this all together, perfecting, pleasing, pretending, producing, performing, notice that all of them work for us. And when we overplay it, they work against us. So in the chat, write down of the P's, which one is the top. You might feel like you're the triple threat. You might have 3 going, or you might have 5 going. But which one do you think gets in the way when it comes to your well-being? Which one really stops you? Yes, producing, it's really common that producing can stop us from taking care of ourselves, because the story is, I will take care of myself once I've got everything done. And I can tell you, nothing is always, like, you never get to that point of everything is done. Your ducks will never be in a row. It's just not possible. We're dealing with too many moving parts. And so start to identify, like, oh yeah, that producing is stopping me from taking that action. So as we move forward, I invite you to think about this idea that my dad shared with me years and years ago, and it is, Meg, you can't kick 10 every day. So if you're not an AFL person, it's really saying that you can't be up and high performing every single day. Some days you put your uniform on, you get to the game and you just watch it go. You sit on the bench. Some days you're going to get on the ground and you're going to make a bit of an impact. And yes, some days you will kick 10. But let's be kind with ourselves and our expectations, and show ourselves that compassion around permission to be human. Some days I can kick 10, some days I can't, and that is okay. So what do we do when our expectations and our reality, and there's a bit of a gap? Because this is what happens when our expectations of all these P's are too high. The destination is burnout. The P's are the recipe for burnout. And so what we start to do now is think about, how can I manage this gap? We manage the gap by increasing our reality, so making some deliberate choices to do things differently, and also being mindful of our expectations and bringing them in line. And that's why I've come up with the ABC. The ABC is just a simple, in the moment strategy for you to think about when life is feeling too much, when you're feeling wobbly, when one of the P's is taken over, you're feeling depleted. Think A, B, C. A is accept. Accept that life is messy. You know, we are so good with our young people at accepting mess, but as we get older, we feel like we shouldn't be messy. We feel like we should be on top of it. But as we age every year, we've never been that age before. We've never been that age before with that responsibility. It's always new. So it's always messy. And so it begins with that acceptance of permission to be human. It's a little bit messy. And the B is breathe. It is free. You don't need a nap. All you need to do is breathe and take a moment to just, oh, this is messy. Breathe. Acknowledge that it probably wasn't on your vision board for the day, wasn't on your bingo card. Life is here. It's having its way at the moment. And then C is connect with what matters. Because when we're overwhelmed, when the P's are in the driver's seat, we start to focus on things that are out of our control and actually don't really matter. And so once we take a moment to accept reality, take a breath, we can connect with, okay, in this moment, what's the most important thing? Okay, the classroom's, it's all happening. The behaviors are big. Who do I need to focus on now? What can I do now? What support do I need? How can I connect with what matters deeply to me? So what we're going to do now, we've got 10 more minutes, so we're going to do this reflection as a group, is I'm going to start a sentence and then you're going to finish it. So you can do this in the chat, you can do it on the paper, whatever feels comfortable for you. Is from this session, I would like to remember. As my mum says to me, Meg, what was your pearl? What did you learn today? So you have taken the time out of your life, off the couch at the end of a busy day to be at this session, which is remarkable. So what is it that you're taking away? What is it that you would like to remember? Something that you can remind yourself daily as you start to make these new changes a new reality for you. As you push against that resistance in that pool and you're making your changes. Circle of control, absolutely. Focusing on what you can. I love that saying of control the controllables. Wellbeing is my own responsibility, absolutely. For sure, there are things that schools need to be doing, and some schools are doing. There are things that the system can be doing. But at the end of the day, when we charge our battery, we're taking responsibility back. We're stepping into our personal power. We don't have as much personal power when we're depleted and exhausted because we're more likely just to avoid anything that's difficult. So that's why it's so important. Keeping your battery charged and give myself time for me. Excellent. So important that you're getting these messages from this session. The second reflection is from this session, the action I am going to take is, oh, look, I love that. I don't have to be perfect to be productive. Absolutely not. Generally, perfection is at odds with productivity. And so it's really important to think about that progress mindset. I am only human, I'm not alone, and I don't have to get stuck in the peas. Absolutely you don't. There is a different way. We're moving beyond the status quo. We're mixing things up and we're giving ourselves permission to be human first and an educator second. So what action are you going to take? Information's great, but it's not enough. Good intentions are wonderful, but it's not enough when it comes to wellbeing, because wellbeing is a intense contact sport. It's not a spectator sport. Your wellbeing is a contact sport. You've got to get in the game doing things for you. Remember the ABC and take time despite feeling guilty. I love that. The battery would make a nice 5-minute check-in with kids and staff. Absolutely. I have got classrooms all over the country that use the battery as a really simple, quick check-in. They're in planners. I've had magnets. I've had cushions made. Like all these different ways schools are using this simple language. And it's also really helpful when you have your parent meetings. Okay, so we've got lots of things going on. Can you give me a little bit of a context? How are they currently sleeping?
Meg, we've been asked for the ABC in the chat as well.
Oh, yep. So the ABC. So accept, breathe, and connect. Beautiful. Find a fun part which inspires the most. See team workers fun. Yes, absolutely. It's a joy. Like this is the hardest part as me being an external now, going into schools, is I miss the joy, the connection. Like that's the magic. I walked into a school today and they're in the staff room laughing about the breakdancing. Like, oh, I miss those moments of just being together. And it's hard to have those moments when we're tired. So really prioritizing it. And the final reflection is, from this session, I will give myself permission to. If you could write yourself a permission slip, or if I could write it for you, what would it be? Oh, we've got one coming already. Rest more. You have permission to rest more. You have permission to breathe. This is not a luxury. This is a necessity. Taking care of your well-being is not selfish. It's a necessity. You know, you have permission to rest without guilt, to do things at my own pace, to move. Permission to laugh wholeheartedly. Absolutely. That's what keeps us going in education. It's the people. It's the laughter. It's the people that you walk into the office and you see them and your life just feels better as soon as you see them. every time I've left a school, the hardest part is leaving my colleagues. And so many colleagues are now lifelong friends. It's the relationships that really, really keep us going. So as we come towards the end of tonight's session, I have given you so much information. I have literally distilled 10 years of educator wellbeing into two main concepts, the battery piece and the 5 Ps. Because when you charge your battery, you will start to notice the 5 Ps. It's like when you charge your battery, you put the lights on. And once you put the lights on, you can actually see what you're doing and you can start to see those 5 Ps. Because when your battery is depleted, you just keep doing the same things over and over and over again. And so in order to break through the status quo and disrupt your current way of functioning, it requires us to invest energy. Because as we invest energy, we get more energy back. Unlike so many of the I deserve it things, the one more episode, the scrolling, the checking the emails, the add to cart, it feels good in the moment, but it doesn't feel good long term. And so when we're thriving, it is by design. An adult in 2024 working in such a complex system, to be well, it requires a deliberate, courageous, and compassionate action. So I hope you're feeling a little bit more like this now. Who feels a sense of release? Like, who feels like their body's just relaxed a little bit and felt like, that's actually worth my time. That actually makes a whole lot of sense. And I feel like I've got some new wheels. Like the wheels are these new skills, are this new language. You've got this new language now of the battery. You've got this language of the Ps. And you've also got a podcast to connect with. So I have a podcast that was weekly for the first few years. Now it's fortnightly. And this podcast is all about real conversations with incredibly big-hearted humans. It could be an experienced educator. It could be a global thought leader. It could be a local leader, a whole range of different people throughout the nearly 130 episodes. And so I've picked out 2 for you that I thought that might be helpful. The first one is women's mental health. I think this is the missing piece in the wellbeing puzzle when it comes to educator wellbeing. And this is a conversation with Professor Jayashri Kulkarni, who is one of the most remarkable women I have ever met. She's one of the first psychiatrists in the country and worldwide who used hormone replacement therapies over 20 years ago with people that were experiencing treatment-resistant mental illness, and shows how our hormone changes impact our quality of life, impact our ability to think. And it was just such a fascinating conversation. And I've had so many educators listen to it and think, oh, wow, that is so incredible. We'll send you a link to this tomorrow if you want to find the link, or we can pop it in the show notes. But that episode's really, really powerful, because if you think about it, when you think about the teaching profession, a lot are women. And so generally there's a lot of things happening that we haven't really talked about before. And then the second episode that I picked out for you is called The Third Space. You may have seen the concept before. And so it's all about how do we transition from work to home? Because for so many of us, we really struggle to disconnect. So we go from home to work to home, but really we're still at work mentally. Like our body is home, but our mind is at work in the morning, in the evening. And so the third space is all about how can you create a space in between where you can finish the workday and then mentally step in to that second shift or that second part of your life. So the podcast is called The School of Wellbeing, and it's all about quality conversations to improve the quality of your life. So if I have done my job well, I have got under your skin, I've made you a little bit uncomfortable, you may have felt like it was a one-on-one coaching session at times, but it's all with the intention to move you towards deliberate action. So thank you so much for your time and your energy tonight. And thank you for the incredible work that you do. And I hope that this inspires you to take deliberate action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. That was amazing. Can I share one thing that I've learned from you as well?
Love it. Go for it. Go.
Because we've had lots of chats before this. I love that you said that once people recognize the 5 Ps in themselves, then they start to recognize it in others, in their colleagues, or if they're in an executive position, they could recognize that in their staff. So if they had, a pleaser, that they're not always asking them to do something because they know that person would always say yes. And I really liked learning that as well. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the extension of those 5 Ps is how does that work in your teams? Because if you've got a whole team of producers, that's a challenge. If you've got a whole team of pleasers, challenge. So I love that you bring that up, Georgie. Beautiful. Look, we've done it. We never, as teachers, we never want to go overtime because we know everyone's always watching the clock. You've done an exceptional job. I hope you've planted some seeds. Congratulations from showing up tonight. Now you can hit the couch without any guilt, turn all the stuff off and have some time for you to reset, recalibrate so you can go again to see those shiny eyes tomorrow. Thank you.